Chapter 10. A Glimpse of Heaven. 1. My speedometer maxed out at 80. To my estimation, I must have been doing over 100 miles per hour as I crossed the Mississippi River Bridge that cold night. Memphis didn't want me. I'd stopped there for a burger at a small bar and grill on my way to a temporary stay in Salt Creek before my Georgia coast departure. From a soldier's perspective, a beer and burger is nice. But as a civilian, a beer and burger, oh boy, what a treat it would be. After I'd easily won the second game of pool, I sat down to wait for my burger. A local gentleman named Hootie decided he didn't like me so much, that he didn't like me beating him on his table. I was shocked that any member of any society would have possessed the audacity to intercept my meal as the young waitress was bringing it to my table. He took a bite of my burger as he looked at me, taunting me. I just sat there, amazed. He then spit on the fries and then, over his shoulder, yelled out, "Becky, this sucks. God damn, how many times do I have to say, no fucking spit on my fries?" He smiled at himself and hysterically laughed as he tossed my plate onto my table. "Oh, some bitch, I'm sorry. Was that yours?" As I sat with my mouth open, I took a calculated look at the situation. He and his friends were drunker than me. He and his friends were bigger than me. I still sat there, a bit frightened by the fact that there was only a slim possibility that I could get out of this without an altercation. I thought for a moment that I should run for it. At any rate, regardless of what I was going to do, I knew it would have to include standing up. I did, slowly, as to not spook the giant imbecile. There were still all his solids left on the table. I stepped to the table, picked up my stick from before, leaned down, and called, "3 ball, side pocket." The red ball sat with its white dot and black 3 just at 2 o'clock from my position. I sized up where I wanted the cue ball to be after its strike and roll. The tap of the chalked leather tip, the vibration of a wooden cue in my hand, the sound of the white resin ball moving across the surface of felt and slate. The red ball clicked as it received the cue ball. I sensed that at least one of them was approaching me from behind. Thump! The hit was heavy. It hurt. A hand grabbed the back of my shirt and spun me around, tossing me like a rag doll. The next thing I remember is picking myself up off my smashed cheeseburger and scattered fries. I distinctly remember the smell of mustard. And although I expected something, I didn't expect it so quickly, so violently. I'd been blindsided by Hootie. I stood, placing my fists in the air. A slight wobble. A pickle fell from my cheek. His buddies joined in the fun. It was hard to see what exactly transpired from my vantage point. I suppose my scars know, but sometimes scars lie. Then, after a minute or two, someone did intercede. I heard a woman yelling. Maybe it was Becky, the sweet waitress with a broken spirit. I heard another voice from someone with authority, perhaps the owner. I never knew his name. I rolled over, looking up from the floor, guarding my face with my forearm. I struggled to my feet. As they bickered with one another, I made my way, or more accurately, staggered my way outside. The shortest and scrawniest of them broke away from the distracted pack to fetch me. I swung. Thwack! He was down in one punch. They all turned to look at me across the pool hall as the runt moaned, rolling around on the floor. I ran. I pulled my helmet over my ears. It hurt as much as the first hit. I started my bike. I nearly wiped out on the gravel parking lot, gunning the throttle a little too much. I battled for balance. "Shit!" I yelled to myself as my bike hummed past the streetlights. The smell of blood, pickles, and mustard was strong with the air trapped behind my face shield. I opened my mouth to examine the damage on my lip with my tongue. I felt it give way. My tongue pressed straight through my split lip. I noticed a pickup truck's headlights coming on my tail in a hurry. Shit! A strip mall was to my left. I pulled in. Then, in great haste, I gunned my bike into the opposite direction, toward the enemy. I jumped back onto the road just as the enemy gave a redneck hoo-wee out their window, passing me in a Chevrolet pickup. Their brakes screeched. The streets were lined with an old industry, closed and dark. Not at all a place you'd imagine being chased by a pickup full of rednecks. The signs gave me no comfort that I'd find my way back to the interstate, as they were all local in nature. In fact, many of the signs weren't even there. Many had been stolen, it seemed, leaving the posts vacant. I needed fuel, but I didn't want to stop at any of the gas stations I was passing. And regardless of the many turns I'd made, I still wouldn't stop in fear that I'd run up on Hootie and his friends. I turned again, hoping that my instincts were directing me with accuracy. Then again, and again, I'd turn, only to be frustrated to have to turn around as I was dead-ending into abandoned factory yards and run-down homes. The dark air was becoming damp and making its way through my clothing as I rolled north and west, or so I thought it was north and west. Oh, my jacket. Crap. I was deflated. I'd forgotten my jacket on the hook against the wall next to the pool table. It was going to be a long and cold night, assuming I made it out alive. A man on foot was just ahead. He had a slight limp. He had a look that he belonged there, that he grew up there. As I approached, I let off the throttle. I thought maybe I could ask for directions. Instead, I heard a voice as if it spoke into my helmet. "Keep going," the voice said to me. The man stopped suddenly, just under a streetlight. He turned to look at me as I drove past. The hard lighting caused his eyes to appear darkened in contrast against his brightly lit forehead and nose. Nothing gave me any idea if he was friendly or not. I accelerated. As I was passing him, as I stared at him, his head snapped back ahead of him. I followed his look. I could hear the loud truck echoing between the buildings just ahead. Shit! Hootie! The Kawasaki waved left, then right as my rear wheel brakes locked up. I stopped. To my left was the walking man. "Keep going," he said to me. Ahead and to the right, a Chevy stepside pickup roared its engine. They found me. They identified me. Then Hootie nearly lost control as he barreled his truck down the road in my direction. I swung around the best I knew how with my limited experience on a bike. I kicked the rear wheel out and away, burning the pavement. As I accelerated, I stole a glance. The man was gone. The scene and headlights were in my mirror. In spite of the excitement, because of the strangeness of the predicament, I looked for the walking man, but the vibration was making it impossible to find him. Within a minute and couple turns, I was speeding through residential neighborhoods on the brick-paved roads. It seemed that each intersection was operating with a different and hate-filled plan, if that were possible. It seemed these intersections, were even trying to kill me with the aggressive and sudden drop-offs, with harsh ramps, with drastic and unexpected imperfections. In the trees ahead of me and the lights in my mirrors, I could see the Chevy bouncing much worse than I had been. I turned. No street sign. I turned again. I was on a big road, Florida Street. I turned on the next large road, E.H. Crump. The road was 4 lanes. There was an abandoned textile building to my right as I rounded the corner. Then a railroad track was just ahead. I paid attention as they rounded the same corner. They'd gained ground. The tracks were a little dicey for a man on a motorcycle. If I wouldn't have been paying attention, I'm sure I would have wiped out. The rails weren't flush with the pavement, but were set just a little above. A trap, I'm sure, for most inexperienced bikers. I crawled over the tracks carefully as they gained even more ground. I could hear them now, yelling. Just as my rear wheel climbed the final obstacle, I cocked my wrist back. My tachometer was buried to the right as I pressed each gear to its capacity. I was cold, yet my adrenaline boiled. Sign: Interstate 55, North. I had just inadvertently merged onto I-55 North. I was running hard. And just as I began to run parallel to the guardrails that ran along the roadside, nearing the river, there was a car, a black and white with its lights perching atop its roof. Crap! I let off the gas. He wasn't moving. Did he see me? I entered a bridge crossing the Mississippi River. Cars were in front of me. There were a few sets of headlights behind me still, but one moved from lane to lane. The front end was rectangular, and it was up a bit higher than the cars near it. It was him. It was Hootie, driving like a maniac. Lights, red ones and blue ones. I pulled to the right lane and continued at the speed limit. I observed carefully. The bridge was long, but I surmised that Hootie must have stopped on the bridge with nowhere to pull over, really. The lights disappeared as I made the bend. "Welcome to Arkansas," read the enormous sign. I found my refuge in West Memphis, in the state of Arkansas, on that night. 2. The broasted chicken was stale and barely eatable, but I ate both the thigh and the drumstick, along with most of an order of crunchy potatoes that had also overstayed their welcome under the heat lamps inside the truck stop convenience store. The curb was my chair. People walked in and out. They'd look down at me, then at my bike. Some ignored me. I was calculating in my head the different state license plates I'd seen driving through the parking lot. A blackbird was hopping and fluttering its way toward me across the lot. It seemed to be used to people. I broke off pieces of the potatoes and tossed them its way. It ignored them. "Why aren't you at the beach? What are you doing in this shithole?" It cocked its head, sitting still, eyes on mine. "Excuse me, young man," an old voice inquired. The bird flew away. The hearty pop of his question nearly scared me to death. I looked up. I was blinded by the overhead lights somewhat. "Yeah? Were you in Desert Storm?" "Sorry?" "Please forgive me. Your boots, they look like military desert boots, like the ones worn over there in the desert." "Oh, yeah, I was there." "Thank you for your service, then." He stepped to the side. He extended his hand. I wiped the grease from my fingers onto my jeans. I grabbed his hand. "You're welcome." I was skeptical of the interaction. I think he picked up on it as my "you're welcome" sounded more like a question than a response. He chuckled. "Well, okay." He stepped off the curb, hiked up his pants by pulling on the edge of his pockets, and sat down next to me. "Whew, long way down here." He smiled. "You know, I wish I could have bought that for you." He pointed at my paper plate. "Oh, this? If I knew how it tasted, I don't know if I would have accepted the offer." His laugh was confident and jolly. I noticed people across the lot turning toward his laughter. It gave me a sense of comfort. "That your bike, I guess?" "Yeah. Yes, sir." "Kawasaki, huh? You like it?" "It's okay, I guess. Kind of cold, though." "It'll just get colder. Where are you from?" "South Dakota." "Well, you know cold, then." He stood and walked to the back of my bike with a painful side-to-side waddle. He wrapped his arms across his belly and rubbed his hands up and down on his arms. "Where's your jacket? Where's your coat?" I shrugged my shoulders. That's not any good." He stood there with his salt and pepper beard and his sweater vest, tapping his belly like a drum. Then, without saying goodbye, he just turned and walked into the store. I picked at a couple of the neglected potatoes, considering that maybe I can't afford to get a room at the Super 8. I walked into the shadows at the side of the building and counted my cash. "Hey, where'd you go?" the old man's voice bellowed. I stepped out of the shadow. "There you are. Here." He tossed me a jacket, a leather jacket. Its smell was intense. The tags still hung from it. "Try her on. See if it fits." "Sir, you don't need to do this." I was knocked off center, truly grateful. I don't know if I'd ever been that grateful prior to that time. I slipped it on. It felt as if it were made for me. That's what it felt like. that its tailor had me in mind. Oh, here you go. Gloves, too? This is way too much. How much did this... Son, don't. I'm a patriot at heart. I don't do nearly enough for those who served. God is offering me a chance to do something. I'm taking it. He glanced toward the store. We're taking it. The door chimed as someone walked out. A woman. She gravitated next to the bearded gentleman, the man with an incredible heart. It looks good, she said toward me. Then to the man, It looks good, doesn't it, my love? He kissed her and pulled her close to his side. Then he said, My name is Jerry. This beautiful woman is my wife, Heaven. Heaven? I asked. That's really my name. She pulled her collar up, smiling. I looked down at the jacket, the gloves, shook my head. I don't know what to say. Anyways, Jerry cut me off, not wanting it to get uncomfortable. I think he stopped me from speaking for my sake. My eyes were beginning to pool in the cold air. Thank you. Thank you very much. I slipped the gloves on. Here's the receipt, Heaven said as she handed it to me. The girl inside knows this was a gift, and that you were outside here, so wear it a second and decide if you want to trade it for another size or something else. All right, sweetie? Okay. Thank you, Heaven. Thank you too, Jerry. I went inside after they walked away to wash up. I turned on the bathroom sink, looked up into the mirror to see that I still had mustard in my hair. Oh, man. My eye was black. My lip was crusted in blood and swollen. That was nothing, though, compared to what these two old strangers had done to my heart, tearing it to pieces that night. I pushed my bike through the chain-link gate of the fence, one that guarded all the tractor-trailers for the drivers who were staying at the Super 8 motel. I parked my bike, pulled off my saddlebags, and began clicking door handles. This is crazy, I thought. After a half-dozen doors, click, one opened. I climbed into the cab, out of the wind and direct cold. I set my watch to wake me before the sun would come up. Of course, I was gambling that the driver would not come out until after then. I hunched over to rest my head on a small box, stained by diesel fuel and grease, filled with nuts and bolts, clips and rubber bands. Something jabbed me in the side. It was sharp. I pulled off my left glove, zipped the jacket down halfway, and pulled the envelope from the inside pocket. On the front, it read, Get a good night of rest. God bless. Jerry and Heaven. I opened the envelope. 2 $100 bills. Thank you, God, I said out loud, meaning the words spoken. I cried until I was done. The weight of their kindness was more than I could bear. It took me a couple of minutes to pull myself together. The next morning was perfectly normal. I was clean, warm, fed, fueled up, and Salt Creek bound.